Steve Barrows, as well as my sister. She's not a member of the class, but she's here somewhere. Thank you for your help. Anything that you like, they're doing, and any failings on my own. Tomorrow we'll be doctors. Under the watchful eyes of family, friends, and faculty, we'll transition into a lifetime of professional healing. In the blink of an eye, we will be able to write our first prescription for our first patient, and then again and again for the countless patients that will follow. It is an awesome power, a power that we must respect. And how we prepared for this great responsibility that begins in just a few short weeks. In addition to the rigors of spring fourth year, I thought it might be useful to refresh ourselves on how best to care for our patients. So as does any good med student, I Googled it. The answer to a healthy life, you ask? 3 words: eat, sleep, exercise. That's it. Get that across to your patients and they should be just fine. Sure, every now and again, we may want to consider prescribing a medication or recommending a surgery, but eat, sleep, exercise should be our runaway bestseller. But as we encounter patients, both healthy and ill, we must always understand the purpose of our prescription. And therein lies the nuance of medicine that we must constantly strive to improve. Let's look at 2 patients to understand what this means. One old, one young. Our first patient is a 91-year-old male who presents with recurrent surgical site infection and kidney failure after a heart valve replacement. I want to talk a little bit more about this patient, as I believe his story can lead us to the correct prescription for both patients we'll discuss today. On the first day of my surgery rotation back in 2011, coming out of his operation, I met a fun-loving, yet then sedated 91-year-old male. He wanted to go home, but soon he started bleeding, and no one knew why. His kidneys began to fail, and despite our best efforts, for the first time in his life, he was forced to rely on dialysis. For weeks upon weeks, teams of doctors focused on improving his blood counts, stemming the bleeding, restoring his kidney function. With great expertise, care, and detail, they executed their critically important jobs. Day after day, they sought to improve each organ system of this 91-year-old male. It was during this time that I had the distinct pleasure of getting to know Bernie Levy, and I thank him for allowing me to use his name in his story today. Rather than the 91-year-old male post-op with renal failure, that concise medical communication dictated we follow him in notes and team discussions. Over 6 weeks, I learned to know Bernie as so much more. He loves sports, he loves to dance, he loves to exercise, he loves a good meal, he loves a good joke, he loves his wonderful family. He's a wonderful husband, a wonderful father, and his family adores him so. For some reason, none of this seemed to fit into the presentation on rounds, nor into the structure of a progress note. And day after day, as he approached his hospital stay with great patience and courage, it became crystal clear that he simply wanted to get back to his life at home. While his medical teams toiled for countless hours, hanging on every decimal change on his hemoglobin, Bernie was instead focused on his inability to chew his own food when his dentures were accidentally lost. To Bernie, a life where one cannot chew one's own food is not life at all. And while his medical team sought to stabilize Bernie's electrolytes, Bernie sought to gain the strength to return to the Florida sun, to restore the tan that his hospital stay had stripped of him. Indeed, to Bernie, life included a healthy, beach-ready golden bronze, even if it's bronze at 91. This is not to say that medical teams must not focus on the complexities of human physiology and disease. Indeed, we must. But whenever we prescribe for a patient, we must understand our patient's goals for that prescription. There is a large push in the medical community toward evidence-based medicine, and I must say that I'm a firm believer in it. But we must understand that our patients do not live in a black and white world much of our medicine now dictates. While there are clear guidelines for cutoffs from everything from blood pressure management to the very ejection fraction reduction that led to Bernie's surgery, we must not lose the forest of a patient's life for the trees of his medical data points. There can and never will be guidelines for the importance of a smile, a laugh, and yes, there will never be guidelines for the importance of a tan. They tell us that we will never have more time to spend with patients than we did as medical students. But I say as we progress through our careers, we must make the time to get to know our patients even better. Learn their desires, their needs, their wants, learn what moves them, what frightens them, what fills them with joy. In short, do not simply diagnose the patient's disease, but also discover the life they wish to lead, and then tailor your prescription to help them lead it. Let us turn now to our second patient. A 28-year-old male presents with a 4-year history of fatigue, cyclical bouts of intense work and celebration, intermittent insomnia, progressive vision deterioration, and, for that matter, general physical deterioration, to be honest, and a limited knowledge of local, national, and world events in spite of an ever-expanding ability to recognize Latin roots. Indeed, our second patient is a graduating 4th-year medical student, and I hope a relatively typical one. Otherwise, I'm probably in some trouble. Just as we diagnose and treat our patients, we must diagnose and treat ourselves. Once again, we can learn from our patients. Bernie's daughter wrote me a while back that there is some heroic masochism involved in the study of medicine. I cannot disagree, and will be the first to say that we function in a profession and a system that celebrates and honors self-sacrifice. Tomorrow we join the ranks of an elite few, charged with a noble mission. It took thousands of hours of committed work and dedication to get where we are today, and to provide the care our patients deserve. That work and dedication continues anew in just a few days. Yes, medicine can be all-consuming, but we must fight the urge to let it consume us. Medical students and doctors are notorious for constantly seeking the next pedestal, the next station. We often suspend certain, or frankly entire aspects of our outside lives for months, and indeed, sometimes years at a time, in a pursuit of these professional goals. The common refrain being, when I'm finally done, I will start living my life, just when I finish. But just as the all-important college studies were followed by the all-important MCAT, an all-important MCAT was followed by the 2 years of all-important preclinical studies, and the preclinical study was followed by the all-important boards, and those were followed by clinical evals and fellowship and residency, and the next academic post, and just another few hundred surgeries, and just another few dozen research papers. Our profession will constantly provide further, seemingly all-important work. Thus, we must fight the urge to suspend our lives, and instead we must live them. This is not to say that we must not be incredibly focused on constantly improving our patient care, but rather, we must find a balance that Edward Abbey so ably described when he said, "Do not burn yourself out. Be as I am, a part-time crusader, a half-hearted fanatic. Save the other half for yourselves and your lives for pleasure and adventure." The past 4 years have demonstrated before our very eyes the fragility of life, the randomness of it all. A white coat does not make us immune to the ebb and flow of life, its towering highs, its terrifying lows. During the past 4 years, we've had romance and heartbreak, births and deaths, good health and ill. Some of our classmates did not make it with us, others joined along the way. Our lives are just as much about the journey as are our patients. And turning back to Bernie's road, I'm happy to say that as of today, nearly a year and a half later, with the support and love of his family and friends, he has regained 26 pounds and strength, and more important, a healthy Florida glow. In closing, we must always be wary of our profession, as medicine is at once intensely human and yet ever more calculated, scientific, and cold. We must commit ourselves to retaining our own humanity and the humanity of our patients. In the coming days, as the excitement of graduation fades and the prospect of residency looms, I implore you to reflect upon your own life choice. Find your Florida tan and treat yourself to it. Commit yourself to living a fulfilling life, not after you reach the next signpost, but now and forever. And when, in a few weeks, we walk the floors with our brand new white coats, and for the decades that follow, may we do the same for our patients and tailor prescriptions, not to improve the next blood pressure check, but to improve the life they wish to lead. So yes, remember, eat, sleep, exercise. Those are the key to a healthy life. The crux of our craft, however, is what we do with life, our patients and our own. At 92 years old, Bernie is living his life to the fullest. How will you and your patients live yours? Thank you.